So, hello everybody. Happy Friday. It is Friday, September 8th. And I'm sorry that I have not been on for the last couple of weeks. We've had people that have not shown up as guest speakers, and I don't want to always be the one speaking, especially when I'm promoting it for somebody to be there and then they don't show. Um, but we're here today because on this lovely Friday, we have my dear friend Allison. Um, she is. I'm going to put this in air quotes. She is visiting us from Canada, way down here in Florida. But I'm sure she's wishing she could be in Florida and not up in the. I'm sure it's getting cold now in Canada by now, right?
Not this last week, actually. It's been hot.
Really? Really? It's been really hot up there?
Yeah.
Wow. So it's really, wow. I thought it was just down here. That's
Mm-hmm.
not really good. It really tells you about the climate change, doesn't it? I was telling my friend John, I said, "Do you know why it's so hot?" And he goes, "Why?" I said, "That means the way the earth is spinning, we're actually closer to the sun. And the closer we get to the sun or the sun comes to us, the harder it's going to be." So he just gave me this funny look. I just, it's okay. So anyway, Allison's here today because she has something new and exciting that she and her ministry has begun. That is really an awesome way to help your children. The whole idea is to help children who are going through some difficulties in their life, and she's going to teach us something, but she's going to share the purpose of those cards and how it can be useful to help you and your children. And then afterwards, she and I are going to go into an interesting dialogue that will hopefully inspire everybody else to do as I've been trying to get done as well. So, Allison, as I said before, I'm going to put myself on mute and do my best not to rudely interrupt, but the floor is totally yours. We are your classroom. You are our teacher. Teach us something that will help transform our lives.
Well, thank you, Dee. That was a very warm welcome. And yeah, I guess. Hi, everyone. I am Allison Pilling. I'm a transformational life coach and author. And I guess that's what's brought me here today. I have been doing a lot of work in the grief space, and that's how Dee and I connected. We connected in the Global Grief Network, which hosts a global grief conference annually in April. So that's where we connected a couple years ago. And since then, the community has just grown. And I know that there'll be another conference next year. We've been doing it virtually, and I think this time it's going to be in person. So that's for April 2024. There'll be the Global Grief Conference in person. So it's something to look forward to. But yeah, so in those relationships and in that space, I guess we'll say recently, I've created a new product, and that's one reason why Dee invited me today. I created this card deck. I don't know if you can see it. It's called The Nature of Grief, a mindfulness card deck for kids. And the concept behind this was to help families and children that were really struggling with identifying and communicating emotions around grief. And I look specifically into grief because part of my story is my background. My husband passed away in 2016. So that was about, 7 years ago? Just over 7 years ago. My kids were 5 and 6 at the time. They are now 13 and 14. So we have been on, we'll say, a healing journey, a transformational journey. I will say our lives look very different than what I thought they were going to be when I first got married and had a family. And we have been through that. I call them life tsunamis, right? That roller coaster of life, or navigating those waves of grief. And over the years, I guess this sort of came to me almost in a vision, meditations, we'll say, this tool. And what this is, this card deck. And right now, this is a prototype. I ran a Kickstarter campaign. What it is are images of animals in nature, and they have the emotions, on the back here, on the bottom. So that's pretty small, but there's all different ones. I'm trying to figure out how to do this with my camera here. And I won't go through each one, but just to give you an idea of what this is. And the idea is to prompt conversation around what these emotions are or could feel like for your children. So some children that I have who have played them literally like, pick them up, throw them around. They match the animals together, the animals that might be together. If the children are a little bit older, they might be able to read the word and be like, okay, this owl is feeling surprised. So, what other animals or emotions would happen, or what would you like to be around if you're surprised? So maybe that could be happy, right? Maybe that could be scared. Maybe that could be, so you can also use them to sort of build your community of animals when you're playing with the cards and interacting with the kids. And also another way that you can use these are for journaling. It's definitely a way to prompt journaling. So again, talking about how do you feel when you look at these cards, what could have happened in their day, when are times where you may have felt disappointed. And there's different guidance that I give both within the card deck itself, and then I've also done a series of videos on my YouTube channel. So that's all available there. And like I said, this is a prototype deck. I've sent them out to schools. I've sent them out to some therapists. So I'm getting feedback from people who are working with them with children. And what the next step will be is to go back and implement their feedback. And to be honest, most people have loved the artwork, the illustrations of the animals, and the ideas behind it. It's more around providing a little bit more guidance to the parents and to the children on how to use them. So that's something I'm working on right now. So again, this is the new product that I created. I created because I had two children that had very different ways of dealing with the death of their father. I had one child who was really reserved and comfortable going in with herself. She created almost like this magical stuffy world where she would go and visit her father and she would talk about that. And then also we had a dog that had died around the same time. So she would go visit them and she'd have experiences to share. So it was almost like a role playing, a spiritual connection that she created for herself, this imaginary world where she found comfort and could articulate how she was feeling. And on the other end, I had my son who fell into what we call the traditional, I guess, male traits. There was anger, there was frustration, there was, physical outbursts like tantrums, there was very harsh language and stuff like that, very intense energy when he was dealing with his sadness. So working with him and working with two children who were only 14 months apart and had very different ways of, I guess, processing that experience, the experience of grief, and what we had to do as a family to adjust and adapt so that we could all find that space of comfort and feeling safe again, and start our healing journey. So I am happy to say that I feel like we're in a great space now. I feel as a mother, my goal has always been to nurture the growth of confident, resourceful, adaptable, capable children. And they are very independent. And I feel confident in their space. They're in grade, 8 and 9. And those can be influential years, with your peers and everything. So I think implementing some of these tools have been very helpful and opening that space for dialogue. And that was the premise behind this, because some parents, and including myself, in those moments feel lost. And even if you're working with a counselor or a therapist, there's those in-between times when, it would be nice to have some tools that are accessible to your family.
Allison, is there like a starting age of when the kids can start using those cards, or
so my recommendation is 4+ and older. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, ones when they're kind of interactive and have like a little bit. Well, I guess you don't really need to have a long attention span. I've used the cards with 3 and 4-year-olds. Yeah,
That's
and they
good.
engage with them. And again, some of it originally, when I did this prototype deck, I didn't give a ton of detailed instructions. There are a couple guidance cards. And like I said, I did a whole bunch of videos on YouTube. And so there's a QR code within the deck that if you want to have more guidance, you can go there. But some of it is to allow the children to create and interact. So I know in the revision, I am going to provide some more questions to help the parents, right, spark some curiosities, we'll say, within the play or the dialogue, if the children are speaking as well. So
Yeah, I know how so very important it is to help work with children who are grieving, because the way society has it, that a lot of times the children are all ignored. In some cases, they'll just get over it, they'll move on. I don't remember I ever talked to you about this, but I think I've talked to somebody else about it. I know I was 10 years old when my mother was killed. And it was like a year later before my father took us 3 girls back in. And during that time, my grandparents, nor my father, nor with the help of my stepmother, did we ever get any kind of help to deal with our grief.
yeah.
And I remember like a year after my mother's death, by this time we were living with my dad, there was like absolutely no. So I'm going to ask you this because I think this is a very good thing to do. There was absolutely no mentioning of my mother. Nothing. No celebration, no acknowledgement, nothing. And I felt like the only way I could grieve for her was when I was in bed in between the cold sheets. And I had to cry quietly because I was afraid my other siblings would criticize me.
Yeah.
So to me, I think it's what is really important that, and I'm sure you can agree with me, and there may be others who may agree. There may be some who would probably disagree. I do think it's important that we do talk about our lost parent.
Yep.
Even if it does make us cry or question or have all these questions.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's...
Well, that's my belief system. So I know at the time, again, my kids were 5 and 6 years old. We had other people pass away within our circle, and I was even questioned about bringing them to funerals. Why would you bring your child to a funeral? Even at their dad's memorial, a lot of our family support systems that had children, they didn't bring their kids. There was one family that brought their kids, and the mother came up to me and said, I thought Gavin and Abigail would need someone to play with. And I said, yes, they are kids. They are kids. And I was like, their dad would love to hear that the kids are together and they're eating the snacks, or they're, laughing or playing tag, or even crying and holding each other's hands. I very much, well, I think that's why we've moved into this grief world, right? When you've had that experience, I believe in having those experiences when they're happening, and developing those coping strategies and those support systems for as you move forward, because there are good days and bad days.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And I wanted the kids to learn that in a supportive environment. Like if they were 23 years old by themselves and had to go to their first funeral, and I know that like I'm not placing judgment or anything, but in our family's experiences, I thought it was important to do some of these difficult things together, so that when they're out on their own, they have some tools, right?
The funny thing, I remember in the 70s when my mother, well, I should say before my mother died, when in the 60s and early 70s, when children were not allowed to come to funeral homes. In fact, now that you mention that, my sisters and I were not allowed to go to my mother's funeral at all. We weren't allowed to go to the wake or the funeral at all. So to me, my personal opinion is that's when I should have had help with my closure of losing my mother.
Yeah.
I believe, because nowadays I've been watching YouTube. I'm not being strange or crazy. I'm just studying different cultures of how people grieve. And I notice how nowadays people bring their children to funerals and they bring them up to the coffin, and it's like no big deal. This is not 2000, 2020. We all generations or situations, society has changed. But I would be still cautious. But I think it would have given me more closure for me if I had been able to go to my mother's funeral, and maybe some kind of acceptance that she's gone. But because I never had that closure or that acceptance at that age, it made it very difficult for me to acknowledge that my mother was gone.
Yeah.
Now, when my grandfather died a couple of years later, we were able to go into the funeral with no problem, and do all that. And it was very easy to accept that grandpa was no longer with us because I had that closure.
Yeah.
But with my mother, I don't know why, it was very difficult for many, many, many years. Many years. Yeah. So I just wish that in a sense we had those cards. Mm-hmm. A lot of what we all know now, I wish we would have had that back then, because even like you said, you've sent us cards to therapists, teachers, counselors, and all, because we're trying to find different tools to help children grieve.
Yeah. Or even just to express emotion. So one of it is, like you said, acknowledge that I've talked to children who don't know what happy feels like.
No.
Like how, like how shocking or sad is that, right? When a child says like, I'm not even sure what happy feels like, or any of those types of things. So it's it's starting to bring that mindfulness or that awareness, that acknowledgement in your body. And the reason why I used animals is because a lot of the times, well, I believe I do a lot of natural practices, we will say, right? I
Yes.
thrive in the natural environment. But also as children, we admire and mimic and are
Yes. Mimic.
fascinated with
Yes.
how the animals just live their lives.
Yes. And
So
the
it was
greatest
to
thing
try
about
and
that
bring some of
too,
that in.
and I'm glad you brought that up because I've heard and seen how people say that animals don't have emotions or don't know what grief is, and I'm like, oh, you're wrong there. Animals know more about their emotions and about grief than we as human beings.
Yeah.
To be honest, they have a better understanding. I mean, look out the window. Um, Look how the elephants. If you come to think of it, I think I saw you had an elephant in your
Mm-hmm.
card. Watch how the elephants all interact with each other when there's a death of one of them. Not just a
Yeah.
death of a child, of one of the babies, but death of a mother or a patriarch. How they all surround that that one elephant as love and support. They have a much dogs, cats. It's amazing what you learn from a dog and a cat, from an animal, than I have from other people, because their grief or, or the emotion is so obvious. You can feel it, that vibe that comes off of them. So if if they have, or even we as children, do, or at least what the emotions are about, right? So then
Yeah.
they know what sadness is. They know what it's like to be unhappy. They know what
Yep, we have this one. That's
you
sad.
you had quite a few of them in there. I think the
Yeah.
problem is they don't know how to explain it. Yes. Yes, see? They just don't know how to explain it. There we go. See?
Yeah, and that's sort of,
They
this is to bridge
don't know
that
how
gap.
to explain it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So I think that's wonderful that you have that, because I just, that you did that. And I'm glad you are also getting positive feedback, as well as, feedback to help make some improvements and stuff like that. But
Yes.
that is, there you go. See, you connect the dots. That's all they have to do is connect the dots. And we are taught by influence. So the way we as adults react is how our children are going to learn how to react. I just wish that my back in those days that they had a much better understanding about grief and how to help children grieve,
Yeah.
because I think it would have probably saved me from a lot of my anxiety and my depression.
Yeah.
Because although my siblings didn't go through the same kind of grief like I did, because I know we all grieve differently. I think in a lot of senses because I grieved for my mother for many, many years, because I was never given that opportunity to do it as a child. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. If it feels like it was put on pause in that moment, right? And you weren't able to even discuss it. Grief can, I think we can pause our grief to accommodate for other people. Like you were saying, you were accommodating, you were keeping quiet and that type of thing, not to disrupt the family or upset your siblings or upset um, your father or anyone else in your family unit. I think that happens a lot of times in grief. And I know in my situation, I definitely didn't, I thought I was moving forward or I was doing well with my grief, but I think it was on pause for at least 2 years after my husband died. Like
Wow.
I was doing things every day, but it was like to take care of the estate, to take care of the home, to take care. We had a dog at that time too, and the kids, and my parents needed some support, caregiver support, and things like that. And I think it was almost 2 years after I was like, okay, I think it's my turn. It's my
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And we,
that was one
and
of
we
the
have to
things because
also
even, sorry, go ahead.
go. I'm sorry. We have to also remember that grief is not about death alone. So
Mm,
those cards are not just for children who might have lost a parent or a grandparent, but maybe
yep.
their parents went through a divorce.
Yep.
Maybe they lost a pet. Maybe they had to move and change schools. So
Yep.
and I know they're too young to understand that there's different types of grief because we as an adult are still learning that ourselves.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, they still experience it, but maybe they just don't know how to share it, or they don't understand it, or they don't understand. How do I say this? Do they understand that it's considered grief? Because society teaches us that grief is death, but
Yes.
it's not just death. It's grief
So,
is grief is an emotional loss, but grief can also be an emotional joy too.
yes.
We just have to learn to distinguish the two. So
Yeah, I like the reference to grief as being love with no place to go. Like no physical place to go. So like you said, any of those things. So even for adults, loss in career, like any of those things that you
yeah,
lose your identity with. So a friend, a
yes,
family member, a home, a
finances, job.
job,
Yep,
finances, things that you
yeah.
might define yourself with. It's like you still have this passion or love or expectations, and there's nowhere for it to go physically anymore. You don't know where to direct it, and
So
and
in a
that can be
sense,
grief.
these cards can help even with I'm just beginning to. I'm gonna throw my internet service out the window any minute now. Um, so in a sense, those cards can help with any of that. With
Yeah,
any,
and that's one of the main feedbacks I got was like, why are you so focused on grief when this is actually more around emotional support, right? Or mindful parenting in a broader scale. So what about looking at it that way? Is like one of the suggestions for a new name for the card deck was feelings other than fine, right? It's like how could you actually expand this to being something more of, like I said, it is designed to be a tool to explore your emotions and how to express them in a healthy way. What do
okay,
they feel like in your body? What happens around you? What do you feel like saying or doing? What are different coping strategies you can do? Some people draw, some people sing, some people
yes.
exercise, some people eat, like some people call a friend. How do you build that toolbox of healthy coping strategies when you have these emotions? But the first step is like, what am I even feeling? Like, what is the emotion? and then, oh wait, I've got all these different tools that I can use in different moments. But yeah, that was one of the big feedback as well, is like it's very focused on grief, but I actually think it could support a larger community. And that's what the children and youth workers within the school system are testing out this September, with kids. I've also had feedback of, what about helping people who may be nonverbal
Oh,
with communicating. I also had someone who their first language isn't English. They're from Korea, and they were like, what about someone even learning the emotion, like the English language and how it relates the word to an emotion? I was like, wow, like this is going in all these different levels. I was like, for me, my specialty is grief. So for me to get this project out into the world, I had to take a little bite size, right? To like make it,
right,
have it
right.
some boundaries so I could like get it into the world and get that first prototype out to see if there was any desire for something like this, right? Do people, I find this helpful. Does anyone else find this helpful, right? So I
Yeah.
had to sort of make some boundaries so I could, bring this out. And again, I focus a lot my work on grief. So that's where we started. But yeah, the feedback has been like, Allison, think bigger.
Yeah. That's good that you getting that you are getting that kind of feedback, because that's a sign that people are opening their minds, they're opening their eyes, and they're opening their heart, and they're saying, "Wow, I don't have." They don't always have to use it as grief. If they can use it for any of those other things, they can. But at least it's right there, available to them. Even if your key note is grief, they can expand because they're thinking, they're overthinking.
Yeah.
And they're overthinking in a positive way. Okay. So, and that's so do you know when this protocol would be completed?
Um, well, like I said, there's not much work to do on the artwork. There hasn't been a whole lot of feedback on that, or most of it has just been on adding a little bit more guidance for use. So I'm thinking I'll tailor that specifically to kids and to parents. So kind of have like a card for the parents, a card for the kids.
Oh,
And I think I might do a title change. I don't know what the title will be, but like I said, I've been having some feedback to sort of encompass the whole emotional intelligence doesn't sound like the right word for me. But sort of that mindfulness, that awareness of identifying and communicating emotions.
so mindfulness
Um,
awareness.
yeah, well, one of the ones I came up with because we're in nature is emotions gone wild.
Oh
An
no, that's
animal.
good. That's good. I like
An
that one.
animal. Yeah, like I'm actually a fairly serious person. I don't know if you get that from me. And I'm very strategic. I'm also an engineer. I'm an environmental chemical engineer. It was my first career before I went into life coaching. So um, I was like, Allison, get a little playful here. You're like working with kids. Like
Yeah.
I'm so
But
fixated
I
on
do
like,
like that one because you're dealing with the different types of
yeah,
animals and stuff like that. I like that one the best. So if you had my vote, I would vote for that one.
yeah. Thank you.
I still like
Yeah.
the one you have now too. So they're both good.
Well, the emotions gone wild, and an animal inspired mindfulness deck or something like that.
Yeah,
Like I want to have the word like card deck for kids in there, so it's very clear. But that one is really popping out at me. I think that's fun.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. Now also, I know to share again about your book and then your website
Mhm.
so people know where to go to find you and your products as well.
Yeah. So I also wrote a book and I published this one last year. It's called RIP, Restoring Inner Peace, a Young Widow's Story of Being Transformed by Love. and it became a bestseller on Amazon. So that's the easiest place to get it, is on Amazon. I also recorded an audiobook. So if you want to hear my voice reading it, you can also get it there, which was an experience. So like I wrote this book by taking a 30-day book writing challenge.
Okay, so now we're going to go into this. So
Yeah.
I remember last year when I first met you, you were telling us about, you were teaching a class how to
Yeah.
write your book in 30 days. And I'm like, and here it is, almost a year later, and I'm still brainstorming in my book to write my book. But then I like I told you earlier, but then I got stuck with a lot of I guess I would say emotional guilt. Because even if I'm brainstorming, I don't have everything like in its full detail, like it or in order either. I'm just brainstorming, and then I'm gonna put them in the correct chapters in the correct order and all that stuff. But just brainstorming and remembering things, it just put me into this emotional guilt and maybe shame. And I feel like there's another word, sort of depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't want to go there because I know it's a very picky thing, and I don't want to discourage people from writing their books, because I think it's really important that we do tell our stories, that we do share our stories, because every one of us has a story to share that's like you inspired me to help write my book. And I did get started on it. But when somebody runs into that emotional terror, I'm gonna call it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, writing a
Why do we
nonfiction
get
book,
really
writing
that?
your story is a journey. It is. I had a rush of emotions come up. Sometimes I was writing and like bawling, right? And then sometimes I was
Yes.
writing and I was giggling, and sometimes I was writing and I
Yes.
needed a nap after because I was like, oh God. Or I was like writing and I had to go outside and just catch my breath because some things were coming up that I think I pushed down. And when I got
And it's
into
coming
that
back up.
creative zone, it brought
Yes.
it up. So, but that all being said, after I published this and I was marketing it, I started to get this fear of the people that were close to me. I was like, that girl in this book isn't this girl anymore. Like there was such a
Yes.
personal growth that happened from the time that when the things in this book were happening to me, plus the years that it took for me to get to writing it and then writing it. When I actually published it, I was like, I don't feel like I'm the same Allison that's in this book.
Yeah.
Um, so having support with the limiting beliefs that come up, the emotional, we'll even just flat out say trauma, like there are emotional things that come up and healings that need to be addressed, trauma that needs to be addressed, and healings to move forward with, right? And yeah, I don't know what to say, but yeah, D, it happens.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't going crazy.
Yeah, and like I said, here I was like marketing this book, and I'm like, I don't even feel like that's me anymore. You know, because there had been so much shining the light on things that needed some attention for me to grow into the person I am today, to even have the courage to hit print. to even
But
have the courage to share it.
but the funny thing is, keep hearing people say, "Why are you worried about your past? Don't talk about your past. Stop looking at your past." And I keep saying, "But my past is what made me who I am today. I would not be who I am today if I had not gone through all those different experiences in the past.
Yeah.
Yes, there might have been some negative things that may have happened, and maybe that's a part that I should forget. But that part is part of my story. It's who I've become. I've changed because of that. And there are so many people in this world today, young people, who may be experiencing what I had experienced or anybody else.
Yeah.
And they need to see or hear or read that other people got through it, and how they got through it made them into a much more loving, kind Christian, maybe. You know, they're different. They're not that person they were. But I keep saying, don't look at your past always as a very negative thing. Or if you have relatives who try to stop you from writing the story
Yeah.
because they don't want to be part of it, and I'm like, but they're part of your story. And they're going to try and stop you from writing your story. That's your story. Their perception of what happened may be different than what your perception may
Yeah.
be. But they're still part of your story. And they need to understand that they are part of your story. So it's not like you're going to go share a lot of dark secrets.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, I'm not going to be sharing a lot of dark secrets. But there are a lot of things that my siblings and I went through that they're part of my story. And it's not a dark secret or a hateful thing or a resentful thing or anything like that. You had to somehow take the negative and turn it around into a positive, because maybe they were part of the story that changed you, that
Yeah.
made you into a better person.
Yeah, it's kind
So
of like, how can we look on our past and instead of with that judgment, right?
yeah,
How can we look at it with compassion and forgiveness? And where were the glimpses of love, or like or like calling for love, you know what I mean? In
yes,
some of those moments where we might not have been our best self, or maybe we were learning, we were doing the best we could with what we knew in those moments, what we'd seen, what we'd read, what we were taught in school or from our families. Um, we were we were all doing the best we could in that moment. So it's kind of like, how do we, yeah, look on that with forgiveness for ourselves and
that's right there.
forgiveness
That's
for
right there.
others.
That's the key. Can
Yeah.
you forgive yourself for whatever happened in the past? Because by forgiving yourself and learning to love yourself is what is making you who you are today.
Yeah, and some of the work I've been doing recently, when we look at those old stories, one of the things that I try and help people and myself, when I do this for myself, focus on is not necessarily the acts that happened or the words that happened, but it was like, what was that lesson? What was that promise to myself when that happened that I would do moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
um, to either protect myself in that moment or to show love or whatever. What was that lesson? What was that promise I made to Allison 10 years ago that, am I actually staying true to that promise? Because sometimes when you don't, things might feel yucky now because you're breaking whatever happened in that moment where I was like, okay, Allison, you're going to take care of your health better, right? Or sleep more, or eat or exercise, or spend more time with the kids, or whatever that promise was, am I actually doing that? And if I'm not, because that's usually that's actually why I left my engineering career, if we're blunt. I kept saying family comes first, family comes first, family comes first. And I recognized that my whole family unit was working around my career. My family wasn't coming first. My career was coming first, and I was becoming burnout. And I just called myself on it. And I realized why I kept feeling like I was going deeper into adrenal fatigue. My digestive system was a mess, like just an exhausted mess, to be honest. My body wasn't processing properly. So, all the fun things that happen with that, and barely getting out of bed in the day, but dragging myself through. I was on my own with the kids. And until one day I was like, wait a second. I always say family comes first, but I'm not living that. So sometimes when we find that disconnect and we pull that together, like, what was that promise I made myself? So when my husband passed away and it was like, okay, I'm putting our health and our family first. And when I was living in a way that wasn't honoring that, I became more sick.
So it was like that stress, the stress that you weren't keeping your promise.
Yeah. Like to the higher self, right? The promise to the higher self was to health and family. And is career part of that? Yeah, in some cases. I still had to work, right? But did I have to work like that? Could I have set up some boundaries? Did I have to be on my phone right after dinner? Like there were some things that I could still be employed and adjust some of my day-to-day habits, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just with some habit changes, with some conversations, and I could make those adjustments. Yeah. But until I acknowledged what was going on, because I didn't know, right? I was living the day-to-day, surviving each day. But once I connected those dots, I was like, oh, okay. And then again, looking on the past with compassion, being like, well, you've always worked 60 to 80 hours a week, right? Like at the time there were supposed to be two of you. You've been a career woman, you've been like all these things, and that's what you've known. And your parents worked, like my dad was a business owner and stuff like that's what all I knew. But I did notice that when my words weren't matching my actions, or that those I don't know if you want to call them soul commitments.
That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah. If you're not honoring them repeatedly or consistently, we'll say, that's when it can start impacting how you're living in your life, the progress you're making. So if you have the goal of writing a book, it's like, why am I not kicking this out the door? Right? Like what's holding me back, and diving a bit deeper. So that's one thing, like when I did the 30-day book writing challenge, I did it with a book writing coach named Joshua Sprague. So I had a coach throughout that 30 days motivating every day, and we could talk about limiting beliefs, and he was doing like group sessions, or you could send him an email if you were getting stuck and having like roadblocks and things like that were coming up. Definitely people want to write their story under different names because they didn't want their family to know some of the stuff. Like there were a bunch of things that came up. And there's different tools and ways to navigate that as well. So yeah, I definitely didn't write I didn't write my book in like 30 days totally on my own. I signed up for his 30-day challenge, and I just committed to myself to give it a try. And again, I'm not a writer. My background is engineering. I did science and math.
That's right, you're an engineer.
Yeah, I'm not a writer. And that's why I was saying, like,
you are
this
now.
is possible. It is. I am.
There's your career change right there, Allison.
Yeah.
You're now a writer, not an engineer.
I know.
Well, you know what? You can still be an engineer in writing, or writing and engineering.
It's
Anyway,
different writing. I did a lot of technical writing, right? And like a lot of it's a different like writing a novel or a book is
yeah.
very different than the technical writing or writing for communication purposes. But yeah, like um but I had those limiting beliefs. I'm dyslexic. So I've had that label. I can't read very well. That's why I went into math. Like, and all these things. So all these stories are popping up in my head. Like, you can't write. Like, you're not very good at this, or, you don't have time for this, or who's going to read it, or you're going to bring shame to your family, or what if you, dishonor your husband's memory, all of those kind of things. Or if you talk something embarrassing about yourself. I had those stories came up. They came up
I'm
for
just
real.
wondering why family think that by us sharing our stories, that it's going to bring shame to the family. And I'm thinking, are they feeling guilty about something? Because what would they think? Why would I write something to bring shame to the family? I have no need or don't have no desire to bring shame to the family. But still, I'm like, they must be guilty of something that they think that you're going to bring their secrets out or something like that.
Maybe
That's
they
not
have
the
a book to write.
that's not the purpose of my story or my book. It's to bring shame to the family. It's to
And
understand.
most people's isn't.
Yeah, the purpose of my book is to teach people about the different types of grief
Yeah.
that bring in that comes in. Um, all I have to do is hit one little thing and my camera comes off. So I got to stop talking with my hands. So anyway,
I thought you were doing that just to keep us on our toes here.
um, so
It's like peekaboo.
teachers, I mean, going back because stupid me stepped too forward. Again, tell us where we can find you, your website, your email, or anything like that.
Yeah, so I'd say the best way to connect with me would be through email. So support@allisoncoaches.com. I also have like a link tree site at Allison Coaches. So essentially, if you look on any social media or LinkedIn for Allison Coaches or Allison Pilling, you'll find me. If you want to speak with me directly, the email's the best way, support@allisoncoaches.com. And Dee, I provided a couple links for you. I don't know if you're able to share that with your community when you post your podcast or if you have an email list, but yeah, as a gift of anyone listening or anything like that, I provided a link. If you wanted to download my book for free, you can do that. You can get a electronic like PDF copy if you wish. You're welcome to share that with your community. Anyone that wants to buy the book, there's paperback, there's the ebook or an audiobook. It's on Amazon, and that's all linked at Allison Coaches on my link tree. But yeah.
If I go and edit this, I'll add that in
Sure.
because I think I do remember you telling me you were going to do that.
Yep, I
Yeah.
sent it to you in that email. So
Yeah.
you're welcome. I don't know if you keep an email list or if there's like a blurb when you post
I
this, but
remember
you're
seeing
welcome
your
to share the
email.
link.
I remember seeing your email, and I know that was, I said, she's sending me that stuff. And then I didn't go look at it. And so,
Well, the email will hold it there for you. It'll
yes,
be safe.
it's sitting there waiting for me to look for it. But I do remember seeing it. Here it is, right here. I do remember seeing it. So,
Yeah, and if anyone is interested in being notified or up to date on this card deck and how it's progressing, if you just send me that email, or again, like I said, on social media to Allison Coaches, just send me a DM, and I just need your name and email. I'm keeping an email list for the people that want to know the progress of this card deck project. So
yeah,
I can do that as well if anyone
I
wishes.
found it. So, Allison, thank you so much for coming back on here with us and sharing your new protocol because your new product. I look for it when you actually have it available
Mm-hmm.
for us to purchase. Until then, but at least we can purchase your book, and we know the cards are going to be available soon.
Yes.
But thank you for sharing all these different ideas that we talked about. And again, I would just still would love to invite you to come back and speak some more because I always love talking with you. And thank you again for motivating me on my book. So you know now what I'm going to be doing this weekend.
I love it.
Um, um, First, I have to go back to John's house and finish the yard before Julie comes because I have this. I'm going to tell you this right now. When I used to live at Judy's house before Judy passed away, that family, they had this big, beautiful yard, this big, beautiful house, but nobody was taking care of the yard. I mean, it was a nightmare. So when I was living there, I planted a lot of plants. I created a nice little botanical garden for Judy because she had Alzheimer's, and I wanted to bring her outside for her to enjoy. So I created this beautiful botanical garden for her in the backyard. But under her window, I put her rose bushes and some other plants. And then along the driveway, I did some plants. And then I also planted what I thought was a fig bush. Okay. So I'm not living there again, but nobody's taking care of the yard. So I figure I'm going to come back and take care of my plants that I put in here that somebody just went and cut down. So I checked out my fig bush. It's now a fig tree, and some of the branches are sort of leaning on the building. And I'm like, oh, geez. No, no, no. Because now Julie's coming from California, and you know what this means? She's gonna cut my fig tree.
Oh
So
no.
I have to figure out how to prune my fig tree to get off the building so I don't get my fig tree cut down. Since she cut down all my other plants and trees, and I don't know why. They're not green thumbs people, and
Hmm.
they don't. All they have to do is come and ask me to come and trim it or whatever,
Yeah.
and they don't do that. She just likes to so I'm like, save my fig tree. But I love working in the yard, and since I don't have one here where I live, I go over there and I do it. And I started on it yesterday. Start trimming some bushes and stuff like that, and bringing life back to the yard. Because the people who come for landscaping, the only thing they do is cut the grass. They
Yeah.
don't do anything else. And I'm like, oh. So I'm doing what I love, and that may take me away from doing what I need to do around in my own place. But I just like even if it's hot outside, just the idea of being outside and in the sun is what I need.
Yeah.
And doing things with my plants, okay? Trimming my plants to make them all look pretty again. I'm being sarcastic, folks, okay? I, I, because for some reason, just being out there, for some reason, gives me a little bit more life. I feel a little bit better. And
Yeah.
even though I'm dealing with a lot of health issues and stuff like that, I really need that sunshine, even if it's hot.
Yeah.
Because, hey, the water hose is just over there. Turn it on and sprinkle it, cool off, and then go right back to work. And there's plenty of cold water, plenty of cold drinks. Hey, there's ice cream to cool you down, anything. But there's something about working in the garden and in the plants that's also therapy.
Yeah.
And, even for kids
Yeah.
who may be going through different, things, trauma in their lives, whether it's an emotional loss or whatever, you'd be surprised how kids respond to working in the garden,
Hmm.
um, planting vegetables, you know, planting tomatoes or potatoes or sweet potatoes or peppers, green peppers or red peppers. Actually, in the backyard at Judy's house, I planted ginger roots and it
Oh,
came out as this beautiful green plant with this beautiful red flower and it smells like ivory soap. And
wow.
then I learned from somebody that in Thailand or Philippines, they do use it as soap. That's how they make their soap. But the ginger roots is what they use for the cooking. Because we all, have ginger ale and well, not just soda, but we use a spice and all.
Yep.
Because ginger is good. You're a natural. You like good
I use a
stuff.
lot of ginger.
You
Yes.
use a lot. But the plant is beautiful when it blossoms. And
Oh,
it's just like, wow. It's amazing how God would make that little white seed into something beautiful as that. And I, and it's like that even with all her lilies and all the other different plants I put in there for her. What's still there at least. Um, Still, it's beautiful how God created all that for us, you know, to enjoy and to help us because ginger is a good spice. There's quite a few spices out there that are actually very healthy for our bodies
yeah.
and
Yeah, it's very healing.
very healing.
Mm,
In fact, I've had some
yeah.
friends at church and that have been trying to push me into a lot of those different spices because of my cancer, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now that I've been diagnosed with this new cancer, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go to the spices and I'm going to learn to enjoy the spices in the way that I should because hopefully that will help bring my
Will
healing
you
to my body,
You can do like this. I do like a ginger, cinnamon, lemon, turmeric tea.
Drink.
It's a
Yeah.
detox tea. Yeah, you boil it for a bit, then you put the concentrate in like a mason jar, and then you put it out in your cup when you're ready, top it up with water, heat it up like boiled water, heat up and put fresh lemon in it. And it's great for your immune system to help your organs detox, like your liver and your kidneys and all this stuff. And it's yummy. Ginger and cinnamon and that, like it tastes really good. Well, I think it does. I like it, but
Well, actually, at our church potlucks, because we have a lot of Jamaicans and Bermudans and
yeah.
um, Haitians at our church, and there's this one drink that they always make, and I think it has ginger in it. I'm trying to remember which spice it is, but it's like when you go drink it, it looks so good when you look at it, but when you go drink it, it's, as soon as it hits like the back of your tongue, you can taste that spice,
It
and I
burns.
think it and it's just like woo, and it's not like sucking lemon because lemon I can bear, but there's one spice, and I think it's ginger, but I could be wrong. You can really taste it, and it really booms.
We
Like
can
that.
add some honey if you need
Yes, I do
sweet.
like. I do add honey to all my teas, my
Yeah.
herbal teas, and all. I don't use sugar with that, but
Well, you can
back to the
experiment with how much ginger goes into your drink.
yeah. I, I'm still learning a lot, but even at my old age, I'm still learning a lot. But we all growing and we're all bettering ourselves and we're all becoming better people to help our own community, the people we love, not just our family, but maybe our church family, our community, and all. Because we just all want to grow to make this a world a better place, a more
Yeah.
peaceful place. And I think
Well,
it can happen once we share that kindness with each other. And
Well, I
I
think that comes back to your book, right? Or any of it. Like the human species is a storytelling species. And we do learn from generational either patterns or stories, whether you want to repeat them or whether you want to stop. what
Yeah.
happened, right? Like we learn from sharing stories, and we've all like think about bedtime with your children. Like we are telling stories from infancy all the way up, and I would say in all cultures there is storytelling, whether it's around a fire, whether it's with a guitar, whether it's at bedtime, whether it's around the dinner table. It's something that's universal in the human species. So like you said before, like keep sharing your stories, right? And people will take what resonates with them, and they'll grow from that. And then you teach within your communities
Yep.
just by living it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
well,
So it's beautiful, Dee. So thank you.
until we meet again,
Yes.
hopefully soon,
Yes.
maybe this next winter or this next spring.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always love having a lot of you guys from the Global Grief Network come on. Um, right now, I'm not with them anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but I still made enough good friends with the coaches there that I don't have to worry about needing GGN to keep friendship with those people.
Yeah.
So until maybe this spring, you'll have something more, and that's something else to inspire us with. Last year was your book. This year is your new products, and we'll see what Allison has for next year. Hey, she's
Who
an
knows?
engineer, and usually engineers are very creative, right? So let's see what else she's going to engineer next.
Yeah. Yeah, I've just gone into a different discipline of emotions.
Now you got to challenge yourself. You're an engineer. What are you going to be more creative? You did the book. You did the this new product, the cards. So now next year, let's see what new product you can come up with that's going to help children or somebody with them and to help them transform their lives and to become better people and to become inspiring people.
Yeah.
It may be not just your story or my story, but it may be their story that can help someone else as well. So,
Yeah, and that's directly how I focus my work. I call it the empowerment ripple effect, right?
yeah,
Maybe I'm working with one person, but then that one person brings it to their family, and those family members bring it to their community. And I
yeah,
truly believe that, if we focus on what we can do, what our gifts are, and the kindness, compassion, forgiveness, all of that stuff, if we bring that out into the world, it does ripple through. When
yes,
people experience those types of stories or interactions, they do remember them, and
yep.
they carry it forward. So,
I agree with you 110%.
so
Oh, it could be
well,
100.
thank you, Dee.
No problem, Allison. I look forward to hearing. I have you on my Facebook, so I so much enjoy watching between you and Jenny Belzer and someone else. I enjoy watching how you guys at your adventures that you have with your kids. I think I saw one with you and your kids gone snow skiing recently, and I'm like, you won't catch me on those hills. But it's fun to watch. Let's see pictures or videos of everybody in the different parts of the country and seeing what they're doing with their families. And it's like every picture we have to remember says 1,000 words, and that one little picture can be a story of its own.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I enjoy watching. Keeping up because I want to hear about that one picture that inspired you to share with everybody. So.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Allison, for being part of Unplugged Grief Ministries today. And I want to thank everybody else for being part of our podcast tonight. I hope what Allison has shared with us tonight inspired you. And maybe there's something that you would like to share with us to inspire us. I
Yeah.
mean, we would love to get that, to hear more from our audiences and what inspires you to help others. So to come back again next week. Next week, I believe we have another special guest that's coming in, and we want you to be part of that as well. So until then, have a wonderful weekend or another wonderful week. And I guess school started this week for many. So If your kids are in school and you're not gone hay crazy yet, we hope you have another good week. I'm just thankful that I don't have to experience that anymore. But at the same time, I miss it.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange? There's that part of you don't want to be part of it anymore, but yet at the same time, you miss it.
Yep. It's strange with the house quiet now.
Welcome to life,
Yeah.
especially if you're a mother.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend, Allison.
Yes. Take care, Dee. Thank
Enjoy your
you.
weekend and or your next week.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.